Okay, now in this question we're going to look at quadratic equations and solving quadratic equations using factors. First of all, we're just going to have a quick look at some things with a number. Okay, we're looking at this question. Something multiplied by 5 equals 0. What number, when you multiply it by 5, gives you 0? And there isn't any number that you can think of like 1 or 2 or 7. That's not going to work. The only number that I can think of is 0. When you multiply 0 by 5, you'll get 0. 3 multiplied by some number equals 0. What number does this have to be? This has to be 0 as well. Okay, because 3 times 0 gives you 0. It's the only way when you multiply by something that you will get 0. And finally, let's look at this part here. Something multiplied by something else equals 0. Well, there's two possibilities here. This could be 0, and this could be 0. So any number here multiplied by a 0 will give you 0. Any number in here multiplied by this 0 would give you 0. And then there's also the possibility that both of them are 0. So we have the option, this could be 0. Whatever this is, it could be 0. Whatever this is, it could be 0. Okay, so when we've got two things multiplied by each other, this thing multiplied by something else and gives you 0, there's the possibility that this is 0, that this is 0, and there's also the possibility that both of them are 0. Now, a lot of the equations that you'll come across when you're looking at quadratic equations describe a graph. The graph will look a little bit like this, and this will be 0, and this will be 0. That's another section. But first of all, we're going to look at factorising quadratic equations and using that result to find out what the values of x are that mean that this equation, this expression, equates to 0. So that in this equation, a quadratic equation, we're going to find out how to solve that. Okay, so in this question we're going to look at this quadratic equation. We have a quadratic expression, x squared minus 5x minus 14, and we've equated that to 0. We've said this quadratic equation, x squared minus 5x minus 14 equals 0. And we're going to try and find out what value of x will work in this equation. Well, we could just guess, but we prefer not to guess. We prefer to use a method. The method that we're going to use first of all is by using factors. Now, I'm not going to go into factors. I've already done loads of questions on factors, so you know that you can factorize this into x minus 7 times x minus plus 2, and that's equal to 0. And as I said before, when you have something multiplied by something else, and that's equal to 0, then you know either this is equal to 0, or this is equal to 0. So let's think about that. If x minus 7 equals 0, what does this number have to be? Or if x plus 2 equals 0, what does this number have to be? And as you know, I'm sure you've done lots of questions up to this already on figuring these questions out. If something take away 7 is 0, well, obviously this has to be 7. And something plus 2 equals 0. To get up to 0, you have to be starting at a negative number, so x has to be equal to minus 2. So there's two possibilities, x equals 7 or x equals minus 2. So x might be equal to 7, x might be equal to minus 2, or x could be both of these values. And normally what we do when we're solving quadratic equations is we say x equals 7 is one answer, x equals minus 2 is a second answer. And in the questions that we're being asked, I'm going to ask you to fill in the two answers. So you're going to be filling in 7 and minus 2. You're going to put that into the answer box that we have, and that'll give you the score.